Have you ever wondered if you should give a relationship a second chance? Stay tuned to learn what happened to a woman whose partner took a job overseas and then decided that he wanted to move back home. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. In today's reading, we are looking at a 3-card spread to answer a question about whether a woman should give her partner a second chance. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there is a link below. This question was posted anonymously on Facebook. To keep things simple, I'll refer to the woman who asked the question as the querent and the boyfriend as Kyle. Kyle took a job overseas a few weeks ago, and the couple officially split up at that time, although the querent doesn't specify the reasons behind his move. The querent misses Kyle terribly. She admits that she is an emotional mess and can't bear the thought of being with anyone else. For the past 2 weeks, Kyle has been calling her every day. He says that he wants to move back home and get back together. The querent is asking, should Kyle and I get back together? She used a 3-card spread. The first position represented the self, and she drew the Hierophant. The second position represented the situation, and she drew the Ace of Cups. The third position represented her challenges, and she drew the 5 of Swords. So let's talk about my first impressions. The Hierophant and the Ace of Cups both have a lot of religious symbolism. The swords on the ground and the 5 of Swords also look like crosses. That made me think that the querent is religious, and that's the only continuity that I can see between all 3 cards. There are 3 people in the first and third cards. There are gray pillars in the first card and a gray stage in the third. The color gray can represent neutrality, objectivity, detachment, or isolation. I expect that the querent is working hard to be objective in the first card, but it devolves into feeling isolated in the third card. The second and third cards both have water and blue skies with different amounts of clouds. Clouds represent things that are unseen. This can be positive like the Hand of Spirit in the Ace of Cups. It can also be negative and represent confusion in the 5 of Swords. Card number 3 represents challenges, and she drew the 5 of Swords. I'm going to start with the third card, which are the challenges. As I've mentioned in previous videos, there is no tarot law that you have to read the cards in order from left to right. The tarot police will not come and arrest you if you choose the card that you are drawn to first. And for me, this is the 5 of Swords. There are 3 people in the 5 of Swords, and we have to decide who is the querent and who is Kyle. The man in green seems to be the one in charge of this scenario, and I assume this to be Kyle, especially because it sounds like the querent did not want the relationship to end, and Kyle is the one reaching out to her. To me, it looks like he's a bully who is doing everything possible to get his own way. He is smirking despite the fact that the other 2 people are retreating. He appears to be very pleased with his efforts to steal their swords, and we are not seeing any kind of kindness or empathy. We can also assume that Kyle isn't the most honest person. It looks like he's managed to get the swords away from the 2 other people. It's hard to imagine in a 2-against-1 situation where your opponents are holding swords that can be done without some kind of deception involved. Whatever he did was enough to make them retreat and leave their weapons on the ground. 5s are all about challenges and change, and swords are about thoughts and communication. This certainly looks like a challenging situation relating to communication. Because Kyle is the one reaching out to the querent every day and asking to come home, it makes me wonder if he's deceiving her to get what he wants, which is a place to stay rather than a chance to rekindle their relationship. The 3 characters are also on a stage. This can indicate that Kyle is performing and that his manipulation is obvious to the people around him, in this case represented by the audience. It can also symbolize that these emotions are highly dramatic, even more so than if the altercation had occurred in the querent's living room. I think that the jagged clouds are significant. They look like storm clouds and symbolize that the weather, like the feeling on this card, is unpredictable and chaotic. Clouds can represent confusion or a lack of clarity, so the querent is confused about the situation and whether she should reunite with Kyle. So let's summarize. This card is about challenges, and I do not see someone who is good boyfriend material. Quite the opposite. Kyle must be a very challenging person to love. Kyle seems to be a manipulative bully who is enjoying making people's lives miserable. He's not even trying to hide his true self from people who know him. I think that he gets what he wants, whether it's a job overseas or immediately returning home and having the querent welcome him back with open arms. Clearly, their relationship is highly turbulent. Unfortunately, the querent believes the deception and doesn't see what everybody else sees. Let's jump back to the first card, which is the Hierophant and represents the querent. The Hierophant is God's representative on earth and originally represented the Pope. The position of his right hand represents a religious blessing. We see crosses along the yoke of his robe and a triple cross in his left hand. This is an individual concerned with traditional religion and things like rules, rituals, doctrines, and moral codes. Today, the meaning of the Hierophant has expanded beyond religion, and we can apply it to institutions of higher learning and even government, or represent seeking guidance from teachers, mentors, or guides. The Hierophant can also represent the need to conform and adhere to societal norms, which people can find to be either comfortable or stifling. For instance, you might appreciate the fact that your church condemns homosexuality as a sin, so you don't have those people worshiping with you, but it's not a fun group for people who are gay and told they will be burning in hell for eternity. The Hierophant can also represent religious rituals such as marriage. Now that you've had a refresher on the Hierophant, let's talk about how it represents the querent and her relationship with Kyle. She doesn't mention if they are married. However, I would think that the querent would be very traditional, and I would expect that they would be legally married, or at least she is looking forward to getting married. She would have traditional expectations for her relationship, where Kyle is the head of the household, that he takes care of her, and that he is faithful. So having Kyle accept a job in a different country and then break up with her would be incredibly upsetting because it is a break from tradition and societal norms, not to mention a complete surprise. I think there would be a strong pull to get back with Kyle because being part of a couple is a very traditional thing to do, especially if you're part of a religious group. There can be a problem when you are part of a social group with specific expectations, and that is that you expect people's actions to align with your beliefs. This is especially true for people who are Hierophants because they can be rigid rule followers and not exactly free thinkers. If you are taught that males need to be circumcised when they are 8 days old, you do so. If you are taught that adultery is a sin, you assume that your partner will be faithful. If you are told that everybody in your fraternity needs to binge drink to be accepted, you follow along and don't worry about getting alcohol poisoning. So the situation with the querent is that we have someone who is traditional, probably somewhat rigid, and expects that she and Kyle will follow societal norms, which include being part of a couple. The idea that he would be manipulative or deceptive is probably not even part of her worldview because that's not how boyfriends should act. You've made it this far in the video, and I wanted to stop and ask for a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It is free for you, and it will also help me grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video. Card number 2 is the situation, and the querent drew the Ace of Cups. Aces are about new beginnings that are given to you as a gift from Spirit. Cups are about emotions and relationships. So when the Ace of Cups appears in a reading, it means that the querent is opening her heart and experiencing a new beginning related to love, her emotions, or a relationship. It can also signal a new step in a relationship, such as deepening feelings towards a love interest, a marriage proposal, or even a wedding. Basically, the Ace of Cups can represent any situation where you are overflowing with love and are full of hope for the future. I feel like the querent is expecting that Kyle's return from overseas will be a new beginning for them. She feels like he has learned his lesson and no longer wants to be apart. I also believe that this card represents promises that Kyle is making to the querent. Look at the direction of the hand. It's almost like it is extended from the Five of Swords towards the Hierophant. I think Kyle is telling the querent what she wants to hear. I believe that she is religious, and the Ace of Cups is the most ornate of the aces. It's also the only one that contains religious symbols. Knowing the querent's background, she would appreciate the dove and the wafer and the 5 streams of water that can represent the 5 wounds of Christ that he suffered during the crucifixion. Yet we see 2 swords by Kyle's feet that also look a lot like crosses, so I don't think he's quite as into religion as she is. I think that Kyle is trying to manipulate her. So the situation is that we have a rule follower querent who is envisioning the beginning of a new life with Kyle, a life that is full of love and promise. She has high expectations for a traditional, happy life, and Kyle is looking out only for himself and telling her what she wants to hear. In summary, the querent wanted to know, should Kyle and I get back together? To answer the querent's question, I do not feel that she should get back together with Kyle. Let's quickly summarize the cards and see how I reached that conclusion. The first card was the Hierophant, and it represents the querent. The Hierophant is a very traditional card about following rules and adhering to social norms. The querent would have traditional, probably somewhat rigid, expectations that she and Kyle will follow societal norms, which include being part of a happy couple. Having Kyle accept a job outside of the country and then break up with her would be highly unusual and deeply upsetting for her. Card number 2 is the situation, and the querent drew the Ace of Cups, which represents new beginnings that are given to you as a gift from Spirit. So the situation is that we have a rule follower querent who is envisioning the beginning of a new life with Kyle, a life that is full of love and promise. She has high expectations for a traditional, happy life. Card number 3 is about challenges, and the querent drew the 5 of Cups. 5s in tarot are about changes and challenges, so there is no doubt that this is a challenging situation. To me, Kyle looks like a manipulative bully. The situation is highly dramatic, unpredictable, and chaotic. I believe that Kyle is making decisions without considering how the querent feels, starting with the move and now wanting to move back home, both of which have created chaos in the querent's life. I think that he's phoning her every day because he's not happy and he wants to come home for himself, not because of his love for the querent. I hope that this video gave you some ideas that you can apply to your tarot practice. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you learned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.